Is that sound, which means it's another week of high school football in the great state of Georgia. Hello, everyone. Welcome into the North Georgia Sports Report podcast. I'm your host, Will Cooper, joined alongside my co-host, my longtime broadcast partner. You know him, you love him. If you don't love him, that's because you don't know him well enough yet. The man, the myth, the legend, born on Valentine's Day because he fell from heaven. That is Art Mosley. Art, how are you doing, my friend?
Coop, man, I feel like I should be paying you for that intro. That's how I'm doing. I mean, you need to be I need to hire you as my publicist. And you just
Well,
you
it's
make
been
me sound like 2,000 times better than I am. Like, I appreciate that.
no. No, you've said every week that I'm doing too much, so I'm trying to add to it each week. So, by the time we get to the end of the season, it could be like the entire duration of the podcast is
Let's
really
say
just about art,
its own segment. I mean, now
which it should be,
I don't know. At that
honestly.
point, again, we run into a problem like we have with my current on-air broadcast partner, Dave Garner. Like it's so hard to get, like, we both have these giant heads because our egos are so big that Cass last week had to stick us outside of the press box because they just couldn't fit he or my ego out there. So you keep this up, man, and my ego might be bigger than Dave Garner's.
Well, I don't know if it has to do with Dave's head size necessarily. I think it may be more of the large, rotund, figure that keeps him from fitting in most press boxes.
And I'll tell you, Coop, that broadcasting with Dave, last week and this week were the first two times that they actually had enough food left over for me. And I don't know if that was had to do with they ordered extra, and then I think I got to the stadium earlier than usual, and our good friend Asa Jones, he's not eating a whole lot, but Dave, on the other hand, he's got his hands in the cookie jar once or twice. So, partner, if you're listening, Dave, we're talking about you big time.
Yeah. Well, Dave needs to go on the Asa diet, and Asa needs to go on the Dave diet. If they do that for a couple months, they should even out pretty well, because right now the law of averages are way slanted. You and I are kind of in the middle of that, averaging the whole thing out.
Yeah,
But
I think so. You know
between
what?
those two.
As it should be. There's there may be a standard deviation outside the mean. But anyway, Coop, that's not why we're here to talk to rag on our friends here. And by the way, if you guys haven't heard Dave Garner call a football game, you're missing out. Whether that's on WLJ 101.1 The Pulse or on down in Valdosta on Flow Sports. He's a consummate professional, does a great job, fantastic job. He will be over at Cartersville for the Cartersville-Alatoona game this week. And so make sure you tune in if you are if you're traveling somewhere, need a game to tune into. I highly encourage you to check out Dave on the radio at 101.1 The Pulse. Now that we've got that out of the way, that commercial that 101 The Pulse is not paying us for, but now that we got that out of the way, Coop, let's talk about, well, I was going to start with the weather, but that's probably not a good subject for you. So let's just get straight to high school football. A lot of a couple of interesting scores, maybe not a lot, but a couple of interesting scores last week. Things that make you go, in terms of seedings. And specifically in Region 5, we've got an absolute logjam, and we'll talk about that. And, you talked about how you're not a huge fan. I'll jump right into this before we get into our segment here for each high school. But you talked earlier, we talked off air about the new GHSA playoff ranking system and a couple of the things that gave you disdain. But I tell you what, in this particular year, how great would it be to have a system like that where you've got 5 teams sitting at 3-1 in region play? And I know there's still a lot to sort out, a lot to play, but you're going to have a team in this region that's going to be sitting at home that probably should be in the playoffs this season. And I don't think this new system will solve all the ills, but I tell you what, it would be nice to get all 4 of these county teams in. And of course, Sprayberry, who's done a fantastic job as well. It would be nice to see them all in the playoffs, seated wherever this season.
What's the point of regions anymore? Why would you play in a region? Why don't we just preseason? Let's let the computer ranking just tell us who's number 1 and who's number 128th in Class 5A. or however many Class 5A teams there are. And then number one plays number 128. And then next week, number one will get to play the next lowest seed. And then we do that until the end of the season. It'll take about 20, 25 games, and we're done. And then it doesn't
Yeah.
matter because well, here's the whole thing with the regions, right? This is the whole point of the regions, is that the representation. First of all, I've never heard the argument that the state champ wasn't deserving. Like I've never heard that the best team didn't win the state title. Like you could argue that maybe in one game the guys that were underrated, won the game and they may not have been the best, but like you're not arguing that somebody that missed the playoffs was going to win the state title. Like okay, you were a fifth seed, dog. Like you weren't going to win the state title. So I've never heard that argument. I get wanting the best 32 in, but there's an element to having, again, we're playing high school football. There's something about having your regions that are geographically oriented. Sometimes still can't explain the Rome thing to me from a couple years ago, but it's fine. I'm over it. But having those geographical representations. So that means that, for example, in Class 6A, we have Region 1 that is the superpowers, so to speak, Colquitt, Valdosta, Lowndes. Okay, well, if they're eons better than the teams up north, then who cares if you're the 3 seed? Go win. Go in. But I don't think that's the point, because if you're the 3 seed in Region 1, that means you lost to the 1 seed or the 2 seed or both. So it's already been decided. I don't know who was calling for this. I don't know who felt like they got snubbed as the 5th seed who had to sit out the rest of the way. Because if you're arguing that you're going to be seated higher, well, if you're the 4th seed, you're going to be knocked down anyway because they're not going to rate you highly. So I think it does away with the geographical point of regions. So why don't we just run a big statewide tournament to start and forget your local rivalries, forget the local flair? That's somebody's gonna have to
Can I
pack up
tell
and go
you?
to Lee
Yeah.
County.
Can I tell you why?
Yeah.
Because of transportation costs is why. Nope. I mean, I think you could say, yeah, we'll just have a wide open schedule. But, for example, Dalton's not going to get on a bus and go play Camden County or Dade County up in Trenton in the far north west Georgia is not going to get on a bus and go play Screven County over on against the Savannah River over there in East Georgia. It's part of that is transportation. I think we see it more in basketball, maybe a little bit in football, where you get a matchup of last year, Final Four game was Grayson versus Wheeler in the Final Four. Probably should have been the state title game because those were the two best teams on paper. To your point, Wheeler beats Grayson. If Grayson, if you're the best team, then just beat Wheeler in the Final Four. You beat them earlier in the season, beat them again, but they didn't. And I think you do get that of we want the best XYZ teams, and I think the way that the bracket's set up and they try to change up the first round matchups every year is a nice approach. But if you want to see, I think there's been several years, at least in basketball, where a quarterfinal matchup, a semifinal matchup, those games could have been your state title games, and you've got somebody else on the other side of the bracket that, just by way of matchups and a couple of, top 10, top 8 teams facing off in the second or third round, it's tough. And once you get to the quarterfinals in any sport, I think bracket play, there are, you to your point, you just have to win. But I think they want to eliminate some of that best teams not getting in because they're trying to. It's an effort to get the best product out there. And I don't know if there's a right way. I do think region play is still important because it allows you to see those top 8 teams or those 8 teams in the top 16 to ensure that playing in region does mean something. It does mean a home playoff game. It doesn't guarantee you more than one. So if you're, I'm picking on Commerce in Jackson County over here, but if Jackson County is a 6-1 on the year, their loss is to Class 3A Jefferson. Or Class 4A Jefferson, who's a top 10 ranked team, but they're in the same, and what I would consider kind of a questionable strength of schedule Region 8 with Alcovy, Appalachia, Wander Barrow, Loganville, and Habersham Central. Why do any of those teams deserve to be in the playoffs over, again, like I said, Lassiter? That's my outlier. I'm going to worst case scenario. But why should Jackson County be penalized for going? There's got to be some carrot for going undefeated or winning your region. And so I think that's why they will maintain the region play, that and transportation. I think that's huge. Just the expense of getting your kids to and from a home, an away game. So anyway, we can talk about this forever. I know we didn't mean to bloviate and opine on this, but I had to bring it up because it was a big news in the GHSA. Certainly, regions will be aligned. That we'll get our first look at that in November. And so now let's get to why we're here. Really, why we're here. We've got 6 teams that were in action last week, all 6 county teams taking on opponents, non-county opponents. So we got a good look at where our Cherokee teams fared in their respective regions. First up, Coop, the Cherokee Warriors hosted the Wheeler Wildcats. Wildcats coming out on top, 21-8. Cherokee dealing with the injury bug. We saw it bite Etowah last year. This year, it looks like it's been up and down with Cherokee, missing your top receiver, missing one of your quarterbacks. Kind of a rough night. The one thing that was consistent was Brandon Hamilton going over 100 yards. Coop, your thoughts on the Cherokee Wheeler ball game?
Yeah, a little disappointed in Brandon Hamilton. I mean, only averaged about 7 yards a carry. He's been averaging about 10. So, obviously production weight. No, I'm totally kidding. Look, he continues to put up fantasy football numbers. Just ridiculous. 19 carries, 123 yards, and a rushing touchdown. The only score for Cherokee. Yeah, look, I mean, I think Cherokee's offense is undergoing a really tough time right now, which is byproduct of them only scoring 1 touchdown. But, I mean, you had Sawyer Ray to start the year, and then injury and just kind of attrition then prevented him from continuing. So then Zach Parker stepped up, and he kind of got the offense rolling like we saw last year, with Tanner Savasier under center. And then he gets hurt in the Etowah game. Sawyer Ray goes out there, tries to fill in. He gets hurt. And then Jack Rubin is who you got filling in the middle, in the interim, and he gets hurt. So, you kind of come out against Wheeler like, we got Brandon Hamilton, we know that, but the passing attack was, obviously, cut down a little bit. Sawyer didn't do a horrible job, 16 to 29, 120 yards. So obviously not a ton of yardage, but the completion percentage isn't horrible, and then did have a pick as well. I think for Cherokee, at this point, it's getting very difficult to qualify for the playoffs because there were a couple of games in there that you really needed to win. Etowah and Wheeler being kind of the 2 that you and I had circled that, like, okay, those are the winnable ones that if you do that, then, you're probably in, and you just need to get somebody else, and then that would put you in a better spot. Walton, they got coming up this week, is going to be a little bit tough. They come in 3-4, but 1-2 in the region. Their lone win in the region is against Wheeler. So, we'll see what that is. The Cooper predictor has Walton as about a 24-point favorite going into this one. I don't know that it'll be that high scoring. It depends. I mean, Cherokee's offense, what kind of version are we going to get? Are we going to get the 8 points, or are we going to get the, 40s and 50s that you were putting up the last few weeks? So that's kind of my question, is just the lack of consistency and figuring out what to do, because your defense helped you out. Arguably for the first time this year, maybe since the Riverwood game, they helped you out.
HBO, right?
You're not playing complimentary. Right, HBO was on, but unfortunately the offense was away from the house, so complimentary football was not there. So we'll see. It's just confusing to know what to do with Cherokee right now as far as predicting games and kind of figuring out their next steps.
Yeah, Coop, Walton, a team that's going under some transition. I would consider a youth movement. They got a sophomore quarterback in Christian Peacock. Jordan Peacock, I believe, is his little brother. Freshman, I think Noriega Thompson, is their leading running back on the year. They're allowing, now this is a team that's allowing 31.5 points a game. They're averaging 25 points a game. So not a typical Coach Daniel Bruner team that we've used to see. But I think this young team is starting to grow up. They haven't strung 2 wins together. They lost in overtime to Marietta last week. You mentioned they did have a 13-point win over Wheeler. Got blown out by North Cobb 41-7. They did beat Norcross at the time. It looked like a good win by 3. They beat Lambert by 10, lost to Roswell by a couple, and then got blown out by McEachern early in the season. So again, a young team, not unlike Cherokee, but I wonder if Ruben can go this week. I think that'll be a big factor. We've seen Galen Sanders kind of pick up a little bit of the slack. He's got 20 catches for 193 yards. And then can Sawyer Ray get it turned around if he's going at quarterback, or will it be Parker? Ray on the season, 388 yards and 2 touchdowns. Parker, his numbers are a little bit better on the season, at least passing, but he's also played a few more games, so that goes without saying. I think if you don't have Jack Rubin, I think it's tough to keep Walton's defense honest, because you got to think they're going to line up and stack the box and try to get Brandon Hamilton, in the backfield, because he has been certainly the bright spot with 1,012 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns on the season on the ground. So, I think it's tough for me to say, because I don't know who's going to be in at quarterback and if Ruben's going to play. But I think, Walton probably wins this game by a couple scores. They're playing at home at Raider Valley. Whether that means anything or not, I think if Sequoiah's, I'm going to call that's going to be a killer. If Sequoyah shows up, it'll be we'll not know what's going on. If Cherokee's defense shows up like they did last week, I think this game will be a lot closer. But I'm going to stay at Walton by about 13. I could see this game being 33-20 or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's far off either, partner. I feel like they're going to score more than 8 regardless of who's in. But it is difficult. Is it going to be the 40 team, or are we going to see the 20s, or where? But I don't think we'll see 8 again. So I'm with you on that one. So again, I have Walton by 24. That's what the predictor says. I will ride with the predictor on this one. It obviously was a bit off on the total score from last week, but it was pretty close on the spread. So yeah, we'll ride with the predictor.
There we go. Coop, and again, you mentioned this, but a very a big game for both teams in region play is Cherokee's, like you mentioned, gotta, if they're looking at postseason action, this is a game they have to have, and Walton can't afford to drop one this week either. So the pressure's on both teams. Last thing I'll say, they did lose to Marietta in overtime. You got to wonder, will there be a little bit of a hangover that Cherokee can take advantage of? So anyway, moving on to maybe one of the most exciting games, on our slate. It was our North Georgia Sports Report game of the week. The Creekview Grizzlies hosted the Sprayberry Yellow Jackets, and for the balance of that game, it looked like we would have a big upset brewing. Maybe upset for us, maybe not for the folks at Owen Store Road, who expected to be exactly in that position. But Creekview falls to Sprayberry in overtime, 36-35. Coop, I believe this is a game you were locked into on Friday night. What are your thoughts on this ball game?
Yeah, I mean it was a great job by the opposition, keeping Sprayberry, moving the football, and the opposition was the officials, because I got to be honest, I've seen a lot of football. It was kind of, I don't know if you'll remember this game, but it was reminiscent of Sequoyah Harrison
I don't remember
in
that.
2018. Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
There will be fans out there that immediately go, I know what he's talking about. 2018 Sequoyah Harrison. This is what it was just like. And look, it's not the reason they lost the game, but they gave them about 90 yards in pass interference calls that, by the book, should not have been pass interference calls. But that's Sprayberry's game. They play backyard football. Sprayberry to me continues to be one of the most undisciplined, lackluster teams you'll see. I think they had 5 personal fouls against Creekview. Again, this is why they're a program that is successful to a certain extent, but the buck stops after a certain time. We saw that against Sequoyah, right? The reason Sprayberry got dominated is because if you're undisciplined in the penalties and give up the personal fouls, then a team like Sequoyah that can fool you with their eyes will show that. Creekview had not scored this many points against a high quality team all year, and Sprayberry gives up that many points. Why is that? It's because Sprayberry is not a very, very disciplined football team. I'll talk more about Sprayberry in a little bit. From Creekview's standpoint, I was impressed with what the Grizzlies did, man. I thought they were very tough. They came out and really kind of put it on Sprayberry to start the game. Really took it. Jaden Duckett, they limited him in the pocket a good bit. Towards the end of the game, he started to get some rollouts that helped. But I thought their pass rush integrity, pass lane integrity was fantastic. The corners did okay, with what they were given. Obviously, giving Duckett 7 seconds to throw, it ended up costing them a few options on Manfred, and then he converted some deeper passes down the field or got bailed out from pass interference calls. I also liked them going into their bag, man. I don't know if you saw the play, but there's a little option play where, Shirley hits it to Mizak for the touchdown. I think that was in the second quarter. They kind of got onto a really good start running the football. Then the passing game wasn't there, and they opened that up. I loved it. I thought it was great. We called for it. We said, who else can catch aside from Shirley? Because we know he can. So who's your option number 2? Mizak showed up big. Penrod from the quarterback position. I think he ran the ball over 20 times. I don't have it on my notes, but I think 23 times. He did a great job, kind of evading that pressure when needed. Carson Lott got into the end zone as well. So all in all, I was impressed with what I saw. It just didn't come together for the Grizzlies. Obviously, when it went into overtime, I from watching the game, I thought this was great. I think that this was kind of playing into Creekview's hand. And then for Sprayberry, a lot of credit to that coaching staff. Going for the win on the road, like the book says. Obviously, the 2-point conversion comes up in a great way. So I know it's disappointing for Creekview, but you got to look at it and say, yeah, we lost. We're no longer undefeated in the region, but we're still tied for first with a team that's got losses to everybody else. And we're now in the middle of the running with everyone else, and everything is still in front of the Grizzlies. At this juncture, if Creekview wins out, you can't promise they'll be the number 1 seed, but it looks pretty good that they would be, I would say. So for Creekview, just keep winning and things will be fine.
Yeah, I think every team has that same kind of motto. They just have to win out. And somebody will need some help, but they have to win out. Coop, the Grizzlies, again, you mentioned an exciting game, and I wasn't at the game, but my wife was, and she had the same commentary. You had, oddly enough, what's wrong with the officiating was horrible. How come Coach Williams didn't go for 2? Those players at Sprayberry were too physical. They should have been getting more personal foul calls. And I was like, and I tried to explain to her, hey, when you're at home, you just get the points.
Take the point after. Tie at home, go for the win on the road.
I tell you, Coop.
Exactly.
And then of course, in her wisdom, she says, well, not everything has to be by the book. And I ended the conversation at that point, because I'll use that against her at some point. In any event, the Grizzlies have to turn their attention quickly. No crying in your plate here, because the Pope Greyhounds come to town. And tell you what, the Greyhounds put a scare in Woodstock last week. Coop, thoughts on this ball game coming up? In the middle, maybe sandwiched in between what I would consider a trap game. Although, talking to one of my coaching friends a couple weeks ago, his comment was, when you're dealing with high school kids, every game is a trap game. And I tend to believe that. So thoughts on this ball game upcoming?
I don't know that this is a trap game, and I think Creekview might be immune from the trap games. And here's why. they I don't think anybody's sitting there like, oh, Creekview's world beaters, which is usually what has to happen for a trap game. You have to say like, oh, we're worlds better than this team we're about to go play. Well, I think from what happened to Pope against Woodstock, to your point, they nearly won the game. They only lost by 6. I think that did enough to be like, okay, we're done. This is clearly not a team that we're just going to beat flat out. But I think secondly, Creekview was on the other side of that, right? Like they went to Calhoun and got rolled. They went. North Forsyth came to town and they didn't score. Cambridge came to town and they got rolled. Like I think they're kind of immune from that because they haven't been riding the highs of the Sequoiahs, even the River Ridges. Like they haven't lived that luxury, because to them, they won 3 games in a row and it was great. But that Woodstock game was a dogfight. They just got out of the Sprayberry game that was a dogfight. So I think this game, I don't see it as a trap game for Creekview. Again, I think Pope can beat them. I don't think it's probable, but it's possible, to use a phrase that you like. For me, I think it's pretty simple. Creekview needs to control the tempo. They need to control the clock. I thought, they brought in Mason Munn in the running back position. He played both ways. It wasn't like he took time off. I mean, I know at the end of Friday night, the poor guy's got to be tired. But, you might need to rotate in some fresh backs. But I think that's key, is just controlling the clock. I think if Creekview goes by their game plan, seeing this game as a 21-7 game would be right where Creekview wants it, to be honest. My predictor personally likes Creekview by 40. I don't know that I'm going to put that crooked of a number up, just because, again, at a certain point you got to kind of shrink it a little bit. But I do agree. I think this game, at least on paper's blow away walking out. But I don't think Creekview is going to be subject to that, and it's also at the Den, which helps a ton. So not having to go on the road like Woodstock did to Pope, in kind of a program that's probably not getting the buy-in that they have in the past, and not as good of when the crowd's not there, it's hard to get excited. So I think it's a good thing Creekview gets it at home. I think the Grizzlies win this walking away.
All right. Grizzlies won this game by 31 points a year ago at Pope. Greyhounds are going to be looking to move the ball on the ground. Coop, they've been going with freshman Ivan Darden Jr., 72 carries for 424 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ethan Alterman, a name, the senior, who's also been getting some run. He was injured early. Now he's got 69 carries for 206 yards. Those two have led the team in rushing. This is a team that loves to set up the pass with the run, so look for play action. They've got to find a way. The Pope Greyhounds have to find a way to get Darden Jr. and Alterman running north and south. I think if they're running east and west, it's going to be a long night for them. Hudson Marenko, a very capable quarterback. I know he's only thrown for 591 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's just not their game to put the ball in the air. I think this might be a low-scoring ball game, Coop. Maybe the first one to get to 21 wins it. Pope is only averaging 11.4 points a game. They're giving up 38. So Creekview's going to have to take advantage of those opportunities to put points on the board against a defense that has been susceptible to giving up big plays. I think if Creekview can control the line of scrimmage defensively and offensively, they win this running away. I think it's a little bit closer than most think. I'd like Creekview to put up another big number here. I'm going Creekview 30 and Pope 13. So I like the Grizzlies by 17.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Again, I don't know. To your point, I think it is lower scoring. That's why I think the 40 number that the predictor says probably a little too hot on the Grizzlies. But I still think that it's a wide margin of victory, whether it be by 13, just because it's a low scoring. You can kind of rationalize that down. So I agree with you 100%. But excellent points as well. I think this plays into Creekview's hands, because they're a physical defense that Pope is going to try and run the football at, which doesn't necessarily work very well. You can ask some of the region mates how well it's worked to try and run it in the teeth of that Grizzly defense.
Coop, let's move on. We've got Etowah as they face Wheeler. Both these teams sitting at 1-2. Someone's got to make a move here in the region. This is a huge game for region standings. Etowah won this game last year, 16-13, in a bit of a slugfest here. The Eagles coming off a loss to North Paulding, a game they were in, early, but could not, as we've seen. Maybe it's been kind of a bugaboo for them. And Coach Vavra mentioned this. They just still have to figure out how to close out ball games, and they weren't able to close it out against really a senior-laden team of North Paulding. 33-20 is a final. North Paulding wins by 13. Wheeler, again, we mentioned, coming off a 21-8 win over Cherokee. And like I said, both these teams sitting at 1-2 in the region. Coop, along with Walton, somebody has to make a move here. Neither one of these teams can afford a slip up this week. What are your thoughts on the Eagles last week?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the same story. If fifths and butts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. That's 9 weeks in a row of me putting that into the podcast. Thank you very much. It's the same thing. If the game ended in the third quarter, Etowah would be a heck of a football team. But unfortunately, that fourth quarter, they just haven't figured out how to close it yet. I think some of it's depth, honestly. You just don't have a lot of rotation, so you probably get tired sooner. And then I think also just, those halftime adjustments. Some of these better teams, i.e. Campbell, i.e. North Paulding, have come out at halftime and been able to adjust to what you've been doing. And whether that's play calling or actually something they're actually adjusting within the plays that they had, who knows? Douglas went 11 to 21, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Not the worst stat line, kind of average, honestly, for what we've seen from Etowah. Had 10 carries for 91 yards as well. Walker Hughes had 4 grabs for 118 yards. So a majority of the yardage came from Walker, not a majority of the grabs. And then, Phoenix Caesar, I'll get it out eventually. And then Cooper Hendricks both had an interception. When I looked at the stat line, North Paulding listed they threw 3 picks. Etowah only claimed 2. So I'm not totally sure if there was who had an extra
somewhere.
pick or if there wasn't. Yeah. So it's kind of weird that North Paulding's like, we actually threw 3 and then Etowah only claimed 2. So whatever. But with that being said, I still feel like that this is a program in Etowah that can win these types of games against Wheeler. So yeah, it was disappointing to see that they couldn't beat North Paulding. But from our standpoint, I don't know about you, but I've mentioned this before, but it was kind of like North Cobb, North Paulding are 1 and 2 in the region,
Mm-hmm.
so I can live with those losses. Just win some of these other ones, and that's kind of where the Wheeler game this week comes up big.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge game. Coop Wheeler, a team, we mentioned this last week, but a team that almost, I don't want to say carbon copy, but very similar to Cherokee. They're going to throw it around the yard a little bit. They've got a running back, Greg Kendrick. He's rushed for 909 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's also caught 17 passes for 204 yards out of the backfield. Their quarterback, Patrick McCullough, has thrown last week. He threw for 223 yards. But he's kind of throwing it around the yard. They've got a couple receivers that do a pretty good job. Brock Adams with 18 grabs, Matthew Morris with 16 grabs. They lead the Wildcats receiving core. But Coop, they're also allowing 34 points a game. So I think this is a team that can be picked off, and I don't. Etowah has already shown the propensity of a defense that flies around. They're not going to be afraid of anybody. They're going to compete. Can they compete? And when they get in the fourth quarter, my question is, will they be able to find a way to run the ball, hold on to this lead or something, or force a turnover when they need to, or get a big stop defensively? The things that have kind of been their bugaboo earlier in the season. But I think this is a team that is ripe for the picking. I almost feel like this game, you could toss a coin up in the air and pick the winner. Etowah playing at home, in my opinion, is probably the little boost they need at Eagle Mountain. I'm going to give the Eagles I like the Eagles by 4. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring ball game. I think it's 28-24 Etowah.
Yeah, so my predictor would say that on a neutral field, Etowah would be the underdog by 2 points. Home field advantage is normally 3. Depends who you ask in high school because travel and it's not really the noise, it's more
Right.
the travel and the habits of the kids. So I don't know. I will just for sake of posterity, I will stick with my predictor and I will give Wheeler the 2-point win on
Okay.
the road in this one. So that way we have something we disagree on and, Etowah fans can be upset at me continuing.
Oh man. Well, Coop, I think that's. We're within the standard of the one standard deviation of each other. So I think
Yeah.
within a score, this game's going to be close. I think we both expect to be a pretty close, competitive ball game with a lot on the line in terms of postseason seedings and standings. So we're pulling for the Etowah Eagles as they face Wheeler at home on Friday night at Eagle Mountain. Coop,
Got it.
it's time to move on. We've got River Ridge up next, but before we get started, this is we're going to bring in one of our special guests. Normally, this is the part where we would bring in a coach, but we've got a special guest, a super fan, someone who has been around the block, around the world with River Ridge, and this is a treat because she is. I think she's actually going to bring the absolute fire to our podcast, and I think you and I are going to have to be on the lookout because. She might just come in and take over the North Georgia Sports Network. But anyway, I think we've got Miss Belinda Jenkins on the line to join us from River Ridge. So let's go to that interview right now.
And continuing our fan special on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast, we have with us Miss Belinda Jenkins representing the River Ridge Knights. If
Time out,
any
Will.
of you listeners,
Time out, Will. You got to call her the super fan for the River Ridge Knights, man. You got to put some respect on this name, man.
I was
you
getting
have a problem.
to it. If you would,
You have a problem with
this.
You have a problem
with
this.
There was a River Ridge Knight.
This is Bush League. You can't even let me get through my intro because I was getting to. If any of our listeners are on Twitter, they would know she is known as the super fan of the Knights. Thank you, Art, for taking the wind out of my sails.
You got to lead with it, man. You just buried the lead.
Listen, I was thinking this morning. The fun fact is, I was born a Knight. My maiden name is Knight, so I was a Knight from birth. And then Daryl Herring decided to name our mascot the Knights. And I got all the ribbon from my family because I was always posting, "Go Knights." And they're like, "Yeah, go Knights." I'm like, "Not those Knights, these Knights."
It was divine intervention that you ended up where you are.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Well, obviously, we want to thank you for being on the podcast, especially for you and I, having been the target of some cyberbullying, which is well-earned cyberbullying.
I would say the object of her affection.
It was deserved.
We'll take it.
It was deserved.
We'll take it. It was 100% was. Obviously, I was super wrong. And I've been wrong a lot, and I will continue to be wrong. But one thing we weren't wrong about was River Ridge looking impressive against Riverwood last week, which continued a nice 35-0 win. Obviously, kind of the big story for that game was the combination of Cox and Pugh. Pugh had 2 touchdowns, 1 in the air and then 1 rushing. And then Cox continued with over 100 yards, which at this point in the season, we kind of look at River Ridge and say, which one of these 2 running backs is going to go for over 100? Because we know one of them is.
Well, we heard Coach Collins earlier in the season say, you don't have enough carries for these 2 running backs. And that's kind of what you're seeing. It's like, if they cover this guy, then we'll just pitch it to this guy, so.
Exactly. So continuing their good work, moving to 6-1 on the season. Ms. Jenkins, from your perspective, obviously as the super fan, what have you seen from the Knights, including, the loss to Woodstock, which now we kind of scratch our heads at, but then turning around with the big win at Sequoyah and continuing their good work since then. Where do you feel like this team is at right now?
I feel like the best is ahead. I feel like, just like Coach Collins said, they haven't played their best game. They haven't played a perfect game, obviously, but they haven't played their best football. And you guys talked last week about teams improving as the season goes. I think if you play that game at Woodstock next week instead of a few weeks ago, you probably have a different outcome. I definitely believe they improve as the season goes, and I believe they're continuing to improve, continuing to have that rhythm, work together, and I think that they still got better games ahead of them for sure.
What if I can ask you before we talk about that game on Friday, talking about this team, what has impressed you as a fan and a member of the community and a member of that program over this season? What has impressed you the most about this group of kids compared to the years prior?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Art, because we really have been here from the very beginning. My oldest daughter graduated Sequoyah, and another fun fact for our family, she was actually hired by Daryl Herring. So we had 2 students that went into that school, one as a teacher and one in the first graduating class. So my second daughter, Ashton's in that first graduating class, but my oldest daughter, Jen, was a math teacher when they opened the school. So we had 2 kids going into River Ridge when it opened. And of course, we went through all those lean years. My daughter Ashton was on the first set of cheerleaders. So, of course, we were invested with the football program. We went to that very first game at Lambert, walked through that whole season, 0-9, all freshman team playing a full varsity schedule. And the heart that we saw with those players is really the foundation that the players today, they stand so strong on the shoulders of those original players who we called them 4-year seniors. The admin called them basement babies because they spent that first year in the basement of Mill Creek. So when they graduated, they called them basement babies. But they were leaders for 4 years, and the leadership that they gained in that 4 years, and then to win the sub-region as seniors, it left a big hole when they graduated, but it was still this great foundation that all of those future players, they stand on those shoulders. And my son, who's my youngest, he played all 4 years with Coach Wynn. And then Mike Collins came right after Connor graduated. And so to see even the lean years then, but man, we loved that program. We were invested. My husband and I were both on the board, with the Booster Club. And then, so now it's like, we don't know the families as well. There's several that are younger brothers of those players that we knew, but it's like we just get to reap the benefit of all the hard work that we did. We can just sit back and enjoy it. And the buy-in that Coach Collins has among his players and among his assistant coaching, his coaches, is incredible. It's incredible to just watch the coaches rally around those student athletes, and then those players just be completely bought in. They're just completely bought in. And that you see that when they play together.
Well, I think we talk about that a lot, Art,
Yep.
because we talk about those interviews when we have with Coach Collins and how much we enjoy listening to him talk, whether it's laughing at me for my bad takes or, for just in general. But Art, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, partner. Just wanted to chime that in.
No, and great point, Coop. What I'll just add on to that. We don't get this perspective typically in our podcast from someone who's been at a program from the beginning. I mean, certainly you're not going to get that from probably not Cherokee or Etowah because of, that's back in the 50s and 70s. But Miss Jenkins, who's been here from the start, and again has been a great fan, not just for River Ridge, but for us as well, and showing us great hospitality when we were coming over and broadcasting games at River Ridge. But just to get that backstory of seeing a program go from some, like you mentioned, some lean years to now the success. And I love how you said it. This team is standing on the shoulders of those basement babies or those 4-year seniors, however you want to put it. And it's exciting to see them have success. And certainly I don't know if it comes off or not when we say it, but it's always fun when we get to look at the results on a Friday night and Will and I know, okay, we're eating crow this week and we're going to have to bring it and we're going to have to face the music from everyone on social media. So we appreciate you holding us accountable. You said, Will kind of alluded to it earlier. I want to get back to the game against Lassiter, just kind of what you saw in that game. And then you guys have a big, Riverwood. I'm sorry, Lassiter. I'm getting my teams mixed up. Thank you, Will. Against Riverwood, and then kind of move our attention to the game this week against Sprayberry, and what are your thoughts on that matchup?
I have thoughts. Yeah, I mean, our defense has been strong all year, so I felt like we saw that obviously with the shutout, but just spreading the ball around. I feel like, again, being a fan from the beginning, we've always been a run team. Even though, you've got years where you have somebody like Jackson Head and you just got to play to that player. But other than that, I feel like we've always had a run offense. So you definitely saw that Friday night. And I did a little bit of homework too, looked at Score Stream yesterday. And again, talking about teams improving. Well, our next two games are home games. Sprayberry, that's homecoming. And then we got Creekview after the bye. They just played each other. Creekview lost by 1 point in overtime, but earlier in the season, didn't Sprayberry lose to Sequoyah? They did.
Lose is an understatement. They got spanked.
Yeah,
so you could say, well, we beat Sequoyah, even if Will doesn't want to admit it. Or you could say, Sprayberry's much improved since they played them. You know what I'm saying? Like both those things could be true, but I'm just saying, I have thoughts. I'm interested to see what happens with the next two games because, I mean, it's homecoming. You got to have a win on homecoming. So I think Friday night, I think it's a fireworks show. I think it's high scoring offense on both sides, but the Knights got to come out with a win.
What do you, Miss Jenkins, what do you know about Sprayberry?
Not a lot. I will be honest. Not a lot. Why? What do you want to tell me?
Oh, I
break the bad news.
Well, I don't know if it's bad news. Just, they've got a couple of defensive backs that are Division I type players, 4 and 5 star. But I tell you that also Creekview doesn't have any 4 or 5 star players on their roster. I don't even think they have any 3-star players on their roster. Their best player moved from running back to linebacker and back to running back. They've dealt with a couple of kids that are not in the program any longer. So a lot of this has to deal with comes down to which kids show up on Friday night. We've seen River Ridge play Sprayberry a couple years ago. Last year, I think this game went down to the wire. They have a very talented quarterback in Jaden Duckett. Probably kind of reminds you a little bit of Lamar Jackson, very slippery. I don't know if they're as physical as they have been under Coach Vavra, but I think this is a game that the Knights can win. And I don't want to steal any thunder from Coop because he's going to talk about one thing, but I just think based on their River Ridge's ability to run the football, I think it gives them an extreme advantage. And to mix in the pass, but I really do like River Ridge's chances on homecoming, and maybe send Sprayberry with 2 losses, and maybe it's all 4 Cherokee County teams getting the playoffs. Who knows?
I definitely feel like there's still a lot of football to be played, and I agree with everything you guys have been saying about those teams in the middle. They're all going to beat up on. I mean, we've grown up watching SEC football. It's the same thing. They all beat up on each other. You got to run through that gauntlet, see who has a higher scoring loss or more wins at the end of the season, but you still got to play all those other tough teams. So,
all right, now we're going to switch gears.
There it is.
I think we have a couple of minutes. You mentioned SEC football. Who's your team, Miss Jenkins?
Florida Gators. I was born in Gainesville.
You were born. So I was born in Jacksonville. Yeah. So maybe
I was hoping that would come up.
Maybe that's why we get along. Now I'm a Miami Hurricane fan, so we own the Gators. Actually, we own the state of Florida. So, But I do want to ask you your thoughts on Will not only insulting the River Ridge Knight Nation, but also coming on our podcast and wearing that ugly script A pullover on his shirt. What do you feel about Will's his fit check tonight?
Disrespect, and this is the conversation Coach Collins and I had this morning because I wanted to verify. I have three bones to pick with you, Will, and I'll try to do them quickly. The first one is. You did say you're a Creekview grad, right? Did you say you graduated from Creekview High School?
He is.
Yeah.
And I don't know the history of that school, but how far away is your graduating class from the original class at Creekview?
9 years.
9 years. Okay, so maybe that gives you a pass on that one. But you should understand if you're a Creekview grad, what it feels like to be the new kid on the block. And until they build that 7th high school in Cherokee County, which is coming, we are the new kid on the block. So I would just love some deference to the River Ridge Knights until they build that new high school. That's one. 2, you called it the Castle. I believe last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, you said the Castle.
Probably.
Okay. I'm going to send you guys a picture as soon as I get off here. I meant to send it earlier. If you've walked up to the stadium, which I know you have because I was with Pam when she brought you that last meatball sub, there's a giant sign on the stadium in all capital letters that says The Ridge. That is the nickname for our stadium. It's called The Ridge.
The Ridge.
That first class of 2013, they thought they were fancy and wanted to speak French, so they actually called it Les Ridge, but it's called The Ridge. It's not the Castle. Clearly, you don't give any credence to home field advantage because you didn't even know the name of our stadium. And I've heard you say Listen, I remember 2020 season. I was actually buying a new car that night that we went out to Owen Store Road and beat
Yep.
Creekview. And Will Cooper said, I just don't think those River Ridge Knights can go out to Owen Store Road and beat Creekview. I was in Kennesaw. I drove straight to the stadium and watched that game in overtime. So I want to hear it. You didn't even know the name of our stadium. So then we play Sequoyah. Obviously, you have no credence. You call it over on Owen Store Road. You always talk about the woodshed, but you don't even know the name of our stadium. So you gave no credence to home field advantage when River Ridge is playing Sequoyah. That is disrespect for our community, thinking that our community is not going to show up and show out when we're playing Sequoyah at home, at the Ridge. That's all I have to say about that.
Man,
Well, that is a totally fair critique.
Coop.
The Ridge.
The Ridge.
It's the Ridge.
I'm gonna put it. I had that sign
I'm
up
gonna
here for
send you a
2
picture.
weeks.
I'm
gonna put it. I'll print it and put it up here so I remember, because I'm a big dum dum sometimes.
It's not the
So
castle.
that's
It's not
fair.
the dungeon. It's the Ridge.
The Ridge. You got it. That'll be. I promise you, it's locked in now.
Coop,
It's all
Okay.
good.
I just felt like we were tardy for class for like the 17th time, and we just got sent to the AP's office, and
Yeah.
that was the last conversation we're going to have before somebody calls our parents. That's what I felt like.
That's it.
Now,
Listen,
Art,
and then I just got to say
ahead.
one more thing. Just know that I usually am listening to your show with headphones in, and my family thinks I'm crazy or I'm talking to myself, and I'm talking to Will Cooper, because every time you say River Ridge and you say, and they got beat by Woodstock, I just want you to know in my house, whenever you say something about Sequoyah, I'm going, and they got beat by River Ridge. But you never say that. You never say Sequoyah, blah, 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 and they lost to River Ridge. You never say that. But you always say we lost to Woodstock. But that's okay. I have much love for you. Bill Cooper. It's fine. And listen, Coach Collins says we'll continue to use it for motivation.
I love it.
I love it. That's what we try and do. That's what we try and do. I'll tell you this story real quick, if I can, Art.
Go ahead, Coop.
This
is great.
I was a young broadcaster. I started calling games when I was 17 years old.
Awesome.
And I was in my second year of doing it, so I was 18, and I got back to the radio station I was working for at the time, and they said, you got a phone call on line 1. And I answered it, and it was a Cherokee parent. We had just called Cherokee and Sequoyah. Mm-hmm. And I answered it, and it's the Cherokee parent. And they said, I really enjoyed it, but you sure were slanted towards Sequoyah. And I was like, well, I am a Creekview grad, and I try really hard not to pick on Sequoyah because I don't like them. I'm still young enough where I don't like them. Mm-hmm. And then about 30 minutes later, I had another call. And they said, well, it's for you on line 1. I picked it up, and it was a Sequoyah parent who was upset that I was slanted towards Cherokee. So I sat there and I listened to her, and I said, ma'am, I have to be honest, you've made my day. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, because I just had a parent who just gave me the exact same speech, but she was from Sequoyah. So you telling me that I was slanted towards Cherokee sure did make my day. Wow. And she sat there for a second. She said, well, I guess that means you're doing a pretty good job. So I take the criticism 100%. The stadium name, dead wrong. I'm dead wrong. Me getting the score wrong, saying you wouldn't score, also dead wrong. I won't be making that mistake again. Totally fair. But I do want you to know that at this point in my career, with having done this for 8 years, I love all of the teams the same. I mean, I think that the atmosphere, personally, if you want to like a little bit of inside track, I think it's like the Ridge is one of the most like personable places that we get to go to call the games. I've always enjoyed that because people come up and speak to us, and that's not always the case at all of the schools. Right. So, and I think we have some great memories. Like one of my favorite football memories is Rome coming in there in that 2020 season that you're talking about. Yep. And Coach Collins just said, we're just going to kick it at that poor kid who's lined up on the 40 every single time. And they recovered like 2 onside kicks off of that specific kid. And, it's like 20 degrees and the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour, but it was a great time. So, but I totally appreciate your criticism, and more than anything, really appreciate the fact that you care enough to want to call us out on it, because it's really what makes the show so great.
Absolutely. Well, being from North Florida, Art knows. People think I'm crazy when I say it, but high school football is just as big in North Florida as it is in Texas. So I grew up high school football. Love it, love it, love it. I can't even watch the NFL because it feels like somebody's uncle playing football. I watch college and high school. I can't watch the NFL. They all
I
got
agree with that.
beards and the gray, Jason Kelsey. I can't do it.
The grades
We
are
weren't
what's
watching high school
discounting.
football.
Okay,
So.
good to know.
So before we let you go, if we
Sorry.
could real quick get your top 6. We take a lot of criticism for this. I mean, I think you know where I stand in my power rankings here, but we want to get, and you know where Will stands, or at least through last week. We want to get your top 6 in the county, starting from the bottom up. So the number 6 team to the number 1 team. What you got?
Cherokee, number 6.
Okay.
And I don't hate Cherokee. I got lots of friends at Cherokee, but that would be my number 6 team.
Yeah, I'm taking notes now. I'll remember that when we play River Ridge in basketball. Just so you know, no mercy here.
No mercy.
All right, go ahead. Number 5.
Y'all aren't going to help me at all. Who'd you have number 5 last week, Art?
Did you not listen?
I did, but I'm old. I forgot since then.
Etowah.
I had Etowah.
We had.
I was going to say Etowah. Yeah, Etowah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then number 4 would probably be Woodstock.
Okay.
Maybe, or Creekview. No, I think Creekview's got to be number 3.
Okay.
And then I got to have my Knights on top. So Sequoyah's got to be number 2.
I mean, that only makes sense since.
Since I'm a Knights fan.
No, since River Ridge being Sequoyah.
Right.
Right.
Later in the season. Right. Later in the season, Will.
Later in the season.
He beat me to it. He knew exactly where I was going with it.
And I totally ascribe to that. They do improve as the season goes. That's why sometimes you see those 1 touchdown wins at the beginning of the season, and then you see them blow out some other better team later in the year. And, those are, again, being a Florida fan, DJ Lagway still hadn't figured it out. So, we're happy for that win against Texas, but sometimes it takes them 2/3 of the way through the season to figure it out. So
he looked better than Arch Manning, but that's a whole nother podcast for a whole other day. I don't know, taking it from a guy who was born in Florida, now lives in Georgia. I love to see Texas struggling. But I'll leave that at that.
Yep.
All right, Miss Jenkins, it has been so good to see you again.
Yes.
It's been a minute since we've been over to the Ridge. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate your candor, your honesty, holding our feet to the fire week in and week out. You have been one of the best, and it's awesome. It is really awesome to get someone who is willing to go toe to toe and call us out. I mean, I think because otherwise, I
don't mean it to call us out, but call a spade. Will, come on. Seriously, I'm in my house. My husband's like, "Who are you talking to?" I'm talking to Will Cooper.
I mean,
that's what I'm talking to Will Cooper and myself.
Look at that. You gotta love it. Miss Jenkins, thank you so much for joining us on North Georgia Sports Report. Will, hopefully he's learned his lesson and he won't be, late. He'll get the name right of the stadium. He'll make sure he doesn't pick against you guys and all of the above. But
so I don't know. Wait. I'll get the stadium name right.
Maybe he'll have you number 1 in the power rankings. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Maybe we'll find out.
We will. We wish you and the Knight Nation the best of luck on Friday night. Homecoming game against the Sprayberry Yellow Jackets should be a fantastic one out at the Ridge. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Go Knights.
Boy, what a good interview that was. I hope everybody at Knights Nation enjoyed that one because, that's what we call, Art, I don't know about how much you know about this, but man, I'm from old Southern Baptist growing up here. I'm talking wooden pews, and sometimes you get into those meetings and they tell you, get your toes ready because, it's going to be a fire and brimstone. We're going to be stepping on some toes. I was in the hot seat, brother. I was sweating on the pew there, and I was making sure I wore my steel toe boots because I was getting preached to.
I'm telling you, man, it's like Coop. I mean, I'm a little bit older than you. I was in one of those churches where we didn't even have air conditioning back in the day, so you had to open up the windows and hold them up with a stick, which will tell you how old I am. But it took me back to my youth that time, and she. Man, I tell you what, she had you, and she was reading your mail, Coop, for sure, here on the North Georgia Sports Report. But great job by Miss Jenkins coming and bringing the fire and the passion that River Ridge football. I especially enjoyed kind of some of the history that she was able to provide about that. That's you just don't get that. And of course, she's also from near my hometown in she from Lake City, me from Jacksonville. But so also nice to again continue to connect with the Floridian. We've known Miss Jenkins for several years now, and excited that we had a chance to get her on the podcast. Coop, she talked a little bit about the improvement and then that of River Ridge and how this team hasn't yet played their best football. Friday night, I thought they played pretty good ball in their shutout win over Riverwood on the road. Now they'll be back at home for homecoming. Thoughts on that game against Riverwood, and then let's go ahead and move into this big matchup in Region 6-5A.
Yeah, I don't know what we're grasping at when we say they're not playing their best football yet, because I mean the Sequoyah game bye week, and then this game is their last 3 weeks of body of work. They're playing as good a football as I think they probably could play to this standpoint. Not saying they've hit their ceiling, but they're certainly playing really good football. I think I understand where they're getting at. There were 2 lost fumbles against Riverwood. I get it. With that being said, they continue to do what River Ridge does, right? I mean, you had Hunter Lockerman go 8 of 13 for 84 yards and a touchdown. Not going to, beat the brakes off somebody passing the football, but does enough. Cox, 11 carries, 102 yards, a touchdown. Ho hum. Here's another one of their backs that goes over 100 yards. And then Micah Pugh had a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. So, you're getting 3 touchdowns out of production from your running back position, which is what River Ridge needs this year. I think from what you take away from that game was there's some things you'd like to clean up. You could argue is a little bit of rust with the 2 lost fumbles from, the bye week, kind of getting back to basics there. Their special teams came up big as well. I believe Arden Redmond had a blocked punt or a blocked field goal, one of the two. But either way, again, another special teams block for the Knights.
Yeah, surprise.
It seems right. If they win a football game, it's because they did something on special teams. So basically, from what I can see, I mean, River Ridge is just doing what they do. As you mentioned, obviously the big deal is coming up this week with their homecoming game. As Miss Jenkins pointed out, against Sprayberry, which, we can kind of fill in the gaps on. Was there anything you wanted to add before we jump into what Sprayberry had to offer here?
No, I think very businessman-like performance for River Ridge last week, going on the road, doing what they need to do, get out of there with the win. I don't believe any scoring in the fourth period, so you get a running clock and you take care of business exactly like what you want leading into a big matchup. Where kids could have been looking ahead, it certainly they weren't. And I think, as Coach Collins mentioned, when we talked to him after that big win over Sequoyah, his thought was, hey, this bye week couldn't have come at a better time for us to get refocused and work on us. And it looked like they did. Like you mentioned, maybe the finer points need to be touched up, the fumbles and things like that. But River Ridge just getting it done like they were supposed to. And now, maybe the biggest, certainly, I think if you ask any coach, what's the biggest game of the season, the next one, right? So this is the next one. It happens to be a huge game between 2 teams we think might be able to make a little run in the postseason. So thoughts on this one, Coop? River Ridge hosting Sprayberry.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that if you kind of look at the externals of this one, River Ridge can put themselves in a really good spot and also help their friends at Creekview out, because we know that River Ridge and Creekview are such good friends. They would kind of do both by product of that and make that game after the bye week even more important, which we'll talk about 2 weeks from now. But look, I mean, this game to me, I got to be honest. I think this is a game that I just see River Ridge kind of controlling a little bit. I mentioned it in the Creekview segment. Sprayberry is not a disciplined football team. They're personal foul prone. They're just not. They just don't play clean football. Creekview showed that they had a lot of issues in the special teams game. Creekview kind of pressed them. Now, they didn't force a lot of bad errors. I mean, there were a couple of missed extra points, but things do not look super sharp in the special teams game. So I think you're spotting River Ridge like 14 points, because I would be shocked if we get to the end of this game and River Ridge doesn't have a blocked punt or 2 and a blocked field goal or 2, blocked point after attempt. That's number one. Number 2 is that if there's one team that's more talented than Sprayberry, it's Sequoyah. And River Ridge did not get out talented by Sequoyah. they limited the talent. So I just kind of see that as the same thing this week. River Ridge's defensive line to me is probably as good as Creekview's defensive line, if not a little better. I think that River Ridge's ability to run the football is better than Creekview's at this point in the season as well. So the one area that you can maybe question is the secondary, right? Is Creekview's secondary better than River Ridge's? I don't know. It's pretty close competition, I would say. But I do think the factors in this game lean up for River Ridge having a pretty impressive game. My predictor personally picks Sprayberry by 9. I don't think it sees what I'm seeing. I'm telling you, I feel really confident about this game. I would put a Travis Scott meal on it. I'm feeling like, this is a win for the Knights by about 10 points. I'm going to go 31-21, and I got the Knights winning this one.
I tell you what, Night Nation, it definitely got you thinking a little bit differently as of late, Coop.
Well, I want to point out too, you can verify this. I said this, I was going to make this pick before anybody got on the podcast and gave me the business. I said earlier, before any of it, that I felt this way, and I would have told you the same thing on Saturday. I didn't feel like I think this is the Knights game.
You did. Coop, Sprayberry, maybe not as prolific on offense in terms of yardage. They're still averaging an explosive 41.7 points a game. As a team, they've rushed for 1,685 yards. Drew Keeling is their leading rusher, but Jaden Duckett is right on his heel. Keeling with 361 yards, Duckett with 345 yards rushing. The two have combined for 10 touchdowns. Keelan Jones, a wide receiver, he's been a menace. Ian Hurlbert, Keelan Jones running the ball and Ian Hurlbert running the ball, 299 and 291 yards to kind of mix in additional depth at running back. So this is a game that could be played very quickly in terms of the clock with both of these teams running the football. But you know that Jaden Duckett's going to drop back and throw it. He's thrown for over 1,070 yards on the season. He's got 14 touchdowns. Jordan Edmonds, 22 receptions. Kobe Lewis, 21 receptions. They both leading the team. Sprayberry allowing 20 points a game. I think there's an outlier there. We thought maybe with Sequoyah, but Creekview was able to put up 28 in regulation. So maybe some chinks in the armor there. I think this is going to be a game where River Ridge tries to control the time of possession with their two backs. I think that's a game where Sprayberry tries to do a little bit more, but I do think they're going to try to out physical River Ridge, and I think there's an edge that Sprayberry has. There's something, those guys are. I would say they want to prove they're a little bit grittier, a little bit tougher than some of our Cherokee County teams. And I think there's a way to do that while still being disciplined. And I think you mentioned that Sprayberry is still trying to find that fine line of that. I don't think River Ridge will be intimidated. This one's going down to the wire, in my opinion. And I think River Ridge edges the Jackets by 3 in this one. I think you might see a 28-25, 31-28 type ball game.
So I got a couple comments in there.
Certainly.
That one point you made that I think is spot on is that Sprayberry will try and out physical River Ridge. They cannot do that. I'm just telling you, there's no way. Sequoyah didn't out physical you, and Sequoyah's offensive line was far more dominant than Sprayberry's offensive line. If you don't believe me, ask Sprayberry, because they got ran out of the building. Right? I mean, it's just there's no shot. I don't see it. Number 2, they do want to prove they're grittier, and I think this would be my message to River Ridge players, because having kind of been in that situation, I understand what you're thinking. They're not a better football team than you. They're not, and they're not a tougher football team than you. They're just less disciplined, and the things that you don't let yourself do is what they're letting themselves do. Because that has been the issue. They did it against Sequoyah. Against Sequoyah, they had like 5 personal fouls. Are they tougher than Sequoyah? No. Were they tougher than Creekview? No. They ended up winning the game, yes, but they weren't tougher. It wasn't a physicality question. So don't get caught up in the game. Don't do it. If you get smacked in the helmet, turn around and look at the ump and say, hey, I got smacked, man. let it roll off your back. Don't get caught up in it. Because I know the attitude you can have with that scenario, and it's easy to be like, oh man, you're telling us they're getting all these personal fouls. Should I be worried? No, you shouldn't. Just go play your game. Be more physical between the whistles, and you'll win the football game. Because they're going to spot you. Seriously, they're going to spot you 75 yards in this game in personal fouls, just based on an average number. And I can tell you that's a culture problem. That's not going to get fixed overnight. So,
all right. Coop has spoken. I wonder if River Ridge will listen, or I mean, at some point, they're
have they
listening.
checked out on me?
I know. I mean, I don't know. Like you've kind of dissed them to you're like the boy that cried wolf, man. And by the time you really, you're coming to their defense and got a message.
By the way, I only picked they were going to lose one game. I wanted Travis Scott me on the fact that they were going to beat Alatoona. Nobody seems to remember that. And here I sit, and I'm the bad guy for one game, and I've picked them all the other 5 or all the other 6 times.
No, people have a short memory. You don't remember the name of their stadium, and you told them they weren't going to score any points against Sequoyah. Well, I mean, what do you expect?
Those were 2 bad blunders.
So that game game at the Ridge. Coop, say it with me, at the Ridge.
At the Ridge. Yeah, it's at the Ridge. It's at the Ridge. I mean, what would you even call it? Art, what are you thinking? What would you even call it? It's the Ridge.
That is our River Ridge segment again. Thanks for Miss Belinda Jenkins. Always a pleasure to chop it up with her, and glad to get her on the podcast. Next up, we're going to go to Sequoyah. They've got a big matchup. It is our, I believe this is our game of the week, Coop, if I'm not mistaken.
Sequoyah and Woodstock.
Yes, our North Georgia Sports Report game of the week. We don't have coach interviews this week, but what we do have is another super fan for the Sequoyah Chiefs, Mr. Jeff Craig. If that last name sounds familiar, he's got 2 young men in that program. One of them happens to be left tackle starter Brody Craig, who is getting a lot of attention from major college level football teams. But he's not here to talk about Brody, man. He's here to talk about the Sequoyah Chiefs. So, Coop, before we get started, let's go ahead and throw it to our Mr. Craig. We got him on. Let's get him on the podcast.
And continuing our fan spectacular here on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast, with us representing the Sequoyah Chiefs, that is Mr. Jeff Craig. Thank you for being with us here on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Huge fan. Been following you guys for a few years now.
Hey, we appreciate the support, and obviously a good time to talk about Sequoyah. We were talking about it before we got on air here, but it's been one of the best runs over the last 3-4 years in Cherokee County. But from your perspective, kind of introduce people why it's the program special to you. Obviously, Art and I know, but for everybody else out there who may just be tuning in, why is the program of Sequoyah so important to you?
So I have 2 boys in the program. One is a junior, Brody. He plays left tackle. And then I also have AJ, and he's another offensive lineman. AJ has just had some buzzard's luck this year. He's about to go in for another knee surgery. So we're just trying to get him back out on the field. He's a sophomore. I coached for both of the boys through CYFA in middle school, and now I just get to sit back and watch and enjoy.
So, Coop, we finally bought a football expert. I mean, outside of the coaches.
That's right. Somebody who's qualified.
He's much more qualified than we are. I can guarantee you that.
That's for sure, because we don't know anything. All we know is what we think we know, which is even less than what we probably do.
I promise you, not much.
But gentlemen, that kind of leads into the conversation this week, because obviously Sequoyah, from our perspective, Mr. Craig has kind of had one of the most historic runs, and that continued with those wins against Kell. Sprayberry was, again, I think I've made the joke a ton of times now, but, I got disposition for watching it, because it was just a slaughter. And then, as you kind of roll into the River Ridge game, I famously kind of stuck my neck out there and said, well, I don't know how River Ridge scores. Obviously, the game doesn't go the way they want. With all of that being said, from your perspective and kind of having a thumbprint on the program, what do you think the locker room is like right now? And what do you think it's kind of the momentum is kind of coming off of that bye week and then last week taking over the game against Lassiter?
I think right now it's, it's week to week. I think that 6th game before a break was really tough on the boys. Looking back at it last year, we got 5, we got a break, and then we actually got a really big break. And and going into it now, you only have 2 games and a break, 2 games and a break, and then playoffs. And I just think it was a long time. We had some guys that looked like that were struggling, little nicked up, and River Ridge they had an amazing game plan. Just watching it, and then they went out and hit us in the mouth, and I think that it was just tough to recover from. But hats off to them, and that was a great game plan by them. I'm just looking at the stats. I think they completed 3 passes for 15 yards and were able to win the game. So after that, kids got a good week off, time to recover, heal up from injuries. Got back out there last Friday night. Got back on the W side. Defense was playing lights out on Friday. It was a clinic. They were just outstanding against a pretty good quarterback from Mitch Seaman has some stars beside his name, and they had a really good receiver, and we were just able to shut him down. And then Colby was able to hit on some long passes, and I think there's a new name you guys will hear, Holden Campbell. Haven't heard too much from him this year, but he had a bust out night. Hit a nice little wheel route down the sideline, and then also got in on an 8-yard carry in the first quarter.
So there's our Sequoyah Lassiter recap from an eyewitness perspective, Coop. I was certainly over in White, Georgia. You were taking in the Creekview game and also giving us updates. Mr. Craig, one of the things that we do know is that we don't like to talk about injuries typically. We know that Will Rajecki did not play. Did you, from a fan's perspective, did you see that cause any issues? And we know he's such a big part of that offense, but how was the team able to rally without him on the field?
Yeah, I think the big thing, Joseph Lacente, he normally plays the Sam linebacker on defense. He came over, stepped in. He and Holden kind of held down the fort at the fullback position, which Holden typically splits time at B-back with Braden Wilbur. Braden stepped up, got some, and there as well. And then, so when you move that, then kind of Jay Marshall, I think that's a name you're going to hear. Jay was outstanding athlete. He's just a sophomore. He stepped up on defense this week. So they were kind of sliding guys all around. And then I think the biggest thing is Colby really stepped up his game. They one of the things Lassiter did was they loaded up the box to stop the run. I mean, obviously you're going to do that with a player like Will, and Colby was able to burn him deep on some passes. He hit Holden for one, hit Jack Ripley for another, and then finally got Brooks in the end zone this year. So like that, I think it's Colby. Really, it's as a player, he's so underrated. But my son AJ was telling me that he said it's amazing to watch him out there on the field because it's just like a coach. He knows the offense. He knows how to check him out of plays. He knows how to check into this play. And I think it's one of the things that doesn't really get mentioned enough is just how smart he is as a student, as an individual, and as a football player. He's able to get them into the right play all the time.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me from watching some of the games, and obviously I'm not hiding my fandom, but he reminds me a lot of Ty Simpson, with his ability to navigate the playbook. And we had Coach Jack mine earlier, and he even mentioned that, sometimes Colby has to check him at the line and correct him out of a bad play call, which is great. You mentioned those stats, 12 of 19, 259 yards, 3 touchdowns. Darling, as you mentioned, 5 grabs, 105 yards and a touchdown. Then Ripley with 3 for 72 and a touchdown as well. So, that's one thing we really like about Sequoyah is they're able to kind of do it both ways. And they will certainly need to do that this week against Woodstock, who proved effective in stopping the River Ridge running game and forced them to throw it. I would expect that we would see something quite similar to that in the game coming up this week against Sequoyah for the Wolverines. So, kind of early thoughts on that one, Mr. Craig? Anything that jumps out to you on the page about Woodstock?
Yeah, there's a couple of outstanding athletes, and some of them I've seen since my boys were in second grade. Trace Washington, I think he's playing both ways for him right now. outstanding linebacker, outstanding athlete, comes from a family of football players. Both his older brothers played, and I think he's getting some time at running back for him now too. And I know he's got offers from some Power 4 teams. I think he just picked up Penn State. Great quarterback, Graham Burmeister. He moved the ball up and down the field on us last year. And just really the difference in the game last year was they weren't able to punch it in when they got into the red zone. They had some trouble. They got some turnovers. And that's really why it was, I think it ended up being like 35-7, but it was a lot closer game. They were able to move the ball. He's an outstanding player. And they're both juniors, so we're going to see them again next year. One guy that I've noticed, I sometimes look at the defensive lines and seeing who we're going to play. There's a number 51, Jabril Ba, someone you might want to ask their coach about. He is really stepped up as a player. He's rushing the passer, defending the run. He looks pretty stout to me, and I don't think that's a name that's really come up a lot, but I kind of remember him from years ago, and then but really this year he looks like he's really stepped it up on their defensive line.
Yeah, Art's going to get a Jabril Ba jersey soon enough because he's been pounding that pavement. I'll give him credit for that, because it's like he found that nugget early, and he's been pounding that. And to wrap things up here with you, Mr. Craig, we do our power rankings every week. We're asking the people that are brave enough to come on here and join us to put their neck out there like we do. If you can give us your top 6 with your power rankings, starting at the bottom and working to the top.
Sure, and as a fan of the show, we can do a 1A, 1B, 1C, right?
You can, we can't. So we'll as our guest, we'll allow you that liberty.
I don't know. Well, let's see. Starting at 6, I can do 6. Cherokee, even though they've got a lot of great offensive pieces, I think Zach Parker's a player. I think Sawyer Ray, if he can, get back with him, he's a good player. Jack Rubin's been lighting up the scoreboard, and then Brandon Hamilton, obviously a good running back. They have a linebacker, Cason Simmons. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He looks like a pretty good player as well. And then they got those 2 tackles. The one who's a sophomore looks like he's really going to be an outstanding player coming up. But, so they got a lot of pieces in place, but just through some injuries, bad luck, haven't really been able to get it going this year. So they would be my number 6 team. And now here's where it gets hard. I don't know. I mean, so I think 5 through 1 we can really, mix or match. I'll go Etowah at 5, even though they beat Woodstock. I still think they're probably a year away. Zeke, he's a junior, great athlete. We've seen him coming up for years. Walker Hughes, they got Brady Slats playing some receiver for them, and then kid I really like at center for them, Preston Shug. But those guys are all juniors. Like, they're all going to be back next year. And so I think maybe, and then definitely Coach Valver coming in has really, really helped them out. I think they're only going to get better, which will make your guys' job a lot harder figuring out these power rankings. And then from there, I mean, look, here's our issue right now in the region. I'm sure you guys are going to talk about that. We got 5 teams at 3-1. Nobody controls their fate, right? So everyone is beating each other. Nobody can win out and say we're definitely the region champ. So this gets really difficult. But I'm going to try. I'll go number 4. And again, these are all very, very close. I'll go with Creekview. They played some really tough competition. I think if you look at the CalPreps ratings, they're going to end up playing 5 teams with a rating of 30 or better. That's a really tough schedule. And again, there's going to be a good team that doesn't make it into the playoffs this year. That was them last year. I think they're really hungry to get back in there. They've definitely played a lot of good talent. A lot of good teams that'll help them a lot. And then so I think I would put them there. Number 3, I'm going to go with Woodstock. Definitely have some big wins, some tough losses this year, lots of talent. And I think that kind of want to see how we do against them this week, obviously. And then Let's see. I mean, I can't go away from us, so I'll go number 2, River Ridge. Even though I mean they're doing a great job over there. They're definitely they have an identity. I know Will talks about this a lot. They know who they are. They know what they're doing. They execute it. They definitely did that against us. And I know our guys would love to line up and face them again. And so I can't not put us at number 1. I think, it's tough. Like I said, I think you can go 1 through 5. You can go in any order, and you're not going to be wrong. But I'll still put Sequoyah at number 1. But I think I'm hoping that our best football is still in front of us. And as a fan, I just get to enjoy it. As a parent, as a as a member of the officer in the touchdown club, all of that. I just get to enjoy it. That's the I leave the coaches to do that job, but definitely that's, you guys put me on the spot here.
Not only do we put you on the spot, but we also have River Ridge's Superfan who just joined us, and we'll get
to say the timing.
We'll get to her portion in a second, and her timing was impeccable. But Mr. Craig, we appreciate you joining us as always. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a fan of the show. You brought so much insight, Coop. I think I might need to be worried about my job for next season, so I'm going to have to step my game up here. But great detail, great insight, and Mr. Craig, we appreciate it, and we wish the Chiefs the best of luck on Friday night against Woodstock.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much again. Like I said, big, huge fan of the show. Love to listen. Would love to hear you guys calling the game again. That's one. Obviously I'm there on site every Friday night, but one of the things I loved last year was going back and listening to those calls, and that, again, that Gainesville game, that was one of the best calls I've ever heard at the end. I mean, that was just would love to hear that one more time from Will to
hey,
have him say, move those chains.
Yeah, you got your marching orders, Will. The people miss you, man.
I'm about to say, what can I say? So again, thank you to Mr. Craig for being with us, man. What great insight. Appreciate the kind words, man. I'll go ahead and drop one here since he asked for it. We got, if you're a Sequoyah fan, Woodstock fan, whoever you got, we're going to see some chains that are going to be moved. So y'all got to move those chains for some first downs in this one, man. I miss saying it. I miss being out there. I love it. And I appreciate that somebody listens
I'm telling you,
to what I was doing, because I put a lot of work into that. So very, very appreciative of Mr. Craig for being with us and made some great points about Sequoyah. I think, he gets a perspective, having sons in the program on the thumbprint, kind of the pulse of that program where we're at right now. So with that being said, Art, to kind of hash out some finer details we didn't get to hit. I know we talked about Rajecki not playing in the game last week and Holden Campbell kind of filling that role. I'm not entirely sure on Rajecki's status, if he'll play this week or if it was just a rest week. I know we got a little banged up in the River Ridge game. But either way, Art, impressive win by Sequoyah to shut out Lassiter, who had put up points in bunches, and then being able to rely on Colby Martin, which we went over the stats earlier. But I was very impressed with their complementary football. There was a lot of HBO going on at Sequoyah this past week.
Had to do it, Coop. I actually ran into a Sequoyah football player. I'll let him be nameless, but ran into one on Saturday afternoon, and just in passing, and the comment was, "Hey, it wasn't our prettiest game, but we got it done. We did what we needed to do to get back in the win column." And I think that's ultimately what happened, similar to River Ridge's victory over Riverwood. Sequoyah going in, and as you mentioned, really stymieing Lassiter's offense. Mr. Craig, who said it so eloquently, and I just want to say again, has his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the county. He's able to whip out stats and names like nobody's business, and so that was awesome to get that perspective. And he mentioned it, the defense able to get a shutout against Mitch Seaman, a quarterback who had early in the season was one of the top passers in the state, one of the top passers in Cobb County, but not getting a whole lot together against Coach Buddy and his defense. They really turned it on and picking up that shutout, 32-0. you got to, hats off to that defense. If they can play at that level week in and week out, this is not to discount Will Ruzecki because he's a difference maker on offense, but it certainly does help your offense when your defense can go out and get a performance like that. And my thought was that Lassiter is going to be able to score a few points because they can throw the ball around the yard. But again, Coach Buddy proved me wrong as he always does, and goes out there and has his defense ready to play. So great job of Sequoyah refocusing and getting the job done. And now they'll have to turn their attention. And what could have been a trap game for the Chiefs going on the road. They did have the bye week, but coming off that week after a loss, and they, without maybe their best offensive weapon. And then again, we talk about, I'll say this again, because I feel like we do talk a lot about Colby Martin, but to hear it come from another parent, to see their perspective in that program of what Colby does, and even his teammates even understanding and realizing how good of a quarterback this young man is. And he's not even going to college to play football. He's going to go play baseball, which is even more impressive to me. So you get a glimpse of how the field general that Colby Martin is. We were there for his first victory as a starter at Tommy Baker Field. And man, I tell you what, he's done nothing but grow since then. And we've heard it from Coach Jackmine. We've heard it from his peers. And now we've heard it from, other parents, just how special of a young man this is at quarterback. And so in any event, good win for Sequoyah, but they've got to, all the nice things we said about them, they got to wash that away, and they got to get ready for Woodstock. They'll be on the road again this week at the Woodshed, or, what does Sequoyah have to do to get a win this week, Coop?
Well, to kind of branch the two together to tell you what they're going to have to do, I think we best kind of look back at what Woodstock did last week and tell you kind of where those two meet, because I think there's an intersection here.
Yep.
Woodstock, beat Pope 20-14. Okay. It's a win. And if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, Pope would always have a Merry Christmas, but they didn't. So Woodstock won the football game. Obviously, for us, it was a little bit shocking to see the final score / see the score at halftime / the score the entire way. A win's a win. So Burmeister went 18 of 25, 194 yards and a touchdown. Also had 22 carries for 75 yards and a rushing touchdown. Xavier Murphy had the rushing and receiving touchdown as well. So kind of the 1-2 punch there with the two of them. Here's what I think for this game. Sequoyah did not perform well against River Ridge's defensive line. If there's a defensive line that's as good as River Ridge's, it's probably Woodstock's in the county, I would say. I'm slightly concerned about that. And the reason I say that is that if you're looking at it from the Chiefs' perspective, did you learn anything from the River Ridge game? That's number one. Number two is that for Sequoyah, whether Will Ruzecki is able to go or not is a huge difference, because I think Woodstock has as good of a secondary as River Ridge does as well. And they really limited the Sequoyah passing attack. And Will Ruzecki makes your yards per carry, 3 to 4 yards better most of the time than over anybody, really. I mean, and that's not dissing Holden Campbell or any of the other backs, because they're good backs. Mm-hmm. But there's a reason that he's a 3-star, probably should be a 4-star, all things considered. So if he's not able to go, then that changes the dynamic a whole bunch, because Woodstock can kind of back out and probably play with their ears pinned back a little bit more, as opposed to if they were there and had to load the box. I'll tell you the matchup to me that I think will make the biggest difference is going to be, can Sequoyah's defense find the success at containing the mobile quarterback that they had when they played Sprayberry, when they played Kell, when they played, Mitch Seaman's not a terrific runner, but he's somewhat mobile, so maybe even Lassiter. That would be my question. Because if they can keep Burmeister, kind of contained a little bit, and Woodstock only scores 20 points, I don't think they hold Sequoyah to 21. So I guess that would be the biggest key for me in this game. This is one that I don't have a strong feel for. I really don't. I feel like on paper Sequoyah is favored by quite a bit, and that makes the most sense to me. But at the same time, with the dynamics of it being at the woodshed and Woodstock having beat River Ridge and Woodstock, falling to Creekview by 4, and where does all of that actually put you? I don't know. I really don't. So I feel like this is a game that, depending on the personnel, depending on the game, it could be a game that if they lined up and played it 9 times out of 10, it would be a different result than what'll happen Friday. So who knows? I guess that's my answer to your question, is who knows?
Who knows? Interesting. You did mention Woodstock, and certainly, again, Mr. Craig, very complimentary of those guys. And he brought up my guy, Jabril Ba. I'm going to call him my guy because I feel like I've,
you earned it.
Well, I was just first to see his stats. That's all it was. And it's like, oh, wow. And it should have been something I probably should have picked up sooner. But I think just that defense of that front seven of Woodstock against that impressive offensive line of Sequoyah. And, I don't know if we've seen a couple of, bookend tackles like Sequoyah has since we've seen the dominant offensive line of Creekview 2018, and even Sequoyah, their line in 2018 with guys like Colton Haney and Alex Majid, just big bodies in there. And so it ought to make it's kind of the game within the game there, who controls the line of scrimmage. And I think you're right. I think we'll see a lot of Sequoyah trying to mix up Burmeister, keep him on his heels, with Drew Williams at linebacker, maybe if not spying, getting somewhere, getting around him, get pressure on him. Michael Fountain, another name I think at linebacker that will certainly be key in slowing down that quarterback scramble game. If they can maintain their rush lane integrity, I think Sequoyah's defense will put themselves in a good position to win. And of course, you mentioned this, Rzeki. He's got if he plays, Woodstock has got to key in on him, and he's a difference maker. The secondary, Sequoyah's secondary has been pretty good. I don't know if they've seen a receiver like Rylan Hubbard, and I think that he can cause them some problems. I mean, maybe there's some guys that lined up, but I don't know if there are teams that put a focus or a premium on that like Woodstock does, and Hubbard, who's been so dominant. You got to think that that Coach Buddy and the Wolverine and the Chiefs defense has drawn up something special for that. Coop, I think this game it goes down to the wire in my opinion, and I think I'm going with the assumption that Rzeki's playing. I know this game is on the road. I know Woodstock beat River Ridge at home. Here's a great opportunity to beat another one, but I think Sequoyah gets it done. I like the Chiefs by 6, probably a lot closer than a lot of other people think. But I think this you might see a 28-34 type ball game.
Can't tell you you're wrong. I mean, I don't know how anybody can really pick it, man. I mean, to be honest, so you're saying it would be a 6-point game with Rzeki in the game?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think
okay.
I think Woodstock's defense is a little bit underrated, and I think they can come in and contain is probably too strong of a word, but certainly give Sequoyah's offense some fits.
Woodstock's really hard to place right now because out of all of the 3-1 bunch, they're arguably like kind of the redheaded stepchild I think people are thinking of out of all of them. Like, I think if you asked Sequoyah, River Ridge, and Creekview fans who doesn't belong, they would probably say Woodstock doesn't, which I don't think is fair because they don't have the worst record out of all of them. Creekview does. They've played the easiest schedule out of all of them. That's fair to this juncture. Okay, so here's what my computer ranking says to your point. Sequoyah should be favored by 24. No shot. No way I would ever pick that line. Hammer Woodstock on. If you give me a 24-point line at the woodshed, I'll take it all day long. I think, man, I feel like Woodstock wins this game.
Wow.
I can't get it out of my head, and I don't know why logically, but I do. I feel like Woodstock wins this game like 24-21.
Interesting.
27-24. I don't know, because in my head, it's like every reason that I would give you why they should win, Sequoyah probably has a better shot. But yeah, I'm going to say Woodstock will win this by a field goal. Totally opposite of what my predictor said, and probably logic itself. But yeah, I can't get it out of my head. It's that feeling is what I'll call it. So we'll go
There
with
we
that.
go. Ought to be a good one over there, Coop. We didn't mention this, but two of the top linebackers in the county, both underclassmen, both with getting heavily recruited at the D1 level in Trace Washington and excuse me,
Drew Williams.
Drew Williams. Thank you very much. I had mine went blank for a second here. Before we move on to our power rankings, Coop, we had our guests give us their power rankings, and what I thought was hilarious is the fact that it was tough for them. It's almost like they didn't want to offend anybody, and it was fun to see them kind of squirm a little bit, like we do from week in and week out. And at this point, I think folks know it's not an offensive thing; it's just our opinion on where the teams stack up based on the prior results. And with I'm going to say this, and I'll probably get hammered for it, Coop. I couldn't even tell you. I'd have to go back and re-listen to what I said last week. Because my mind, changes like the weather here lately. But we want to go ahead and get into our power ratings for this week, and then we'll kind of close out the podcast. But before we do that, again, thanks again for Mr. Craig and Miss Jenkins. If they wanted to start a podcast, I think we have to call it like the Frickin' Frack podcast. But if they wanted to start a high school podcast, they've got enough material where they could run us out of town. But so great job, Mr. Craig, Mr. Jeff Craig, and Miss Belinda Jenkins. You guys were fantastic.
Absolutely.
And for us. And so we really appreciate it. Our power rankings, number 6, Coop. I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way. I'll go first. I've got Cherokee at number 6.
Same. I think Cherokee's been at 6 since week 2 for me. So that's where they've stayed the entire time. I just don't know how you move them anywhere else until they win a football game.
Yeah. How about number 5, Coop? Where are you sitting?
Yeah, Etowah still. I mean, I was somewhat impressed with the fact that they took North Paulding a little bit further down than I thought they would have gone. But pretty much everybody else above you won or lost a game in overtime. So you don't get any bonus points for me from doing that. So Etowah stays at 5 for me.
All right. I've got Etowah at 5 as well. I think, again, maybe I think Mr. Craig even said this, maybe 1 year away with Coach Favre really getting everything instituted. They've got an opportunity to make a move here this week, maybe not in our power rankings, but certainly more importantly in their region play. So Etowah at number 5. Coop, number 4, who you got?
Well, I kind of agree with what our two guests said. It's like, 1 through 4. And I'm like, exactly. That's where we get the most heat is 1 through 4. And that's when y'all both are like, I don't know. Yeah, we're the same way. We don't know. If you want my personal opinion, what I think, I put Woodstock at 4. It makes even little less sense why I picked Sequoyah to lose to Woodstock. But it just feels like a gut feeling. But yeah, I put Woodstock at 4. To me, they have the least impressive resume out of the 3-1 teams in Region 6. So,
okay.
Number 4.
All right. Number 4, I also have Woodstock, Coop. I think I had them there last week. I'm going to keep them there this week. Should not get penalized for a win, even, no matter how it came in, nor should you be credited for a loss. But it was very curious. I'm very curious about those results on last Friday night. It doesn't matter. They got the win. They move on, as you mentioned, in a 5-way tie for first place in the region. But Woodstock, my number 4 team as well this week. Number 3, Coop, where you going?
Yes, I stick Creekview at number 3 again, same as last week. Look, it's a hard loss. I mean, I know that's got to be one of the most heartbreaking losses that has happened at the Den in a while, and I feel that. It sucked to watch it because they kind of had, their way about it for a little bit there. It's tough to watch. I don't think it hurts where Creekview was at. I mean, I look at it like if you had told us at week 3 that they would lose in overtime to a point to Sprayberry, we would be like, ain't no way.
Right.
So it kind of speaks volumes about how far they've come. I know that's a, like a moral victory for them that they're not going to accept. But I still think that they're as dangerous as anybody else. And most importantly, they beat Woodstock. So that kind of is a head-to-head that I do have to admire and appreciate at this juncture. So Creekview number 3.
Yeah, you mentioned the head-to-head. I know that's become a point of contention for us in our rankings, but like you mentioned, that more recently that game was played, and I think that's why it carries a little more weight, at least for me. I've got Creekview at number 3 also. Valiant effort on Friday night. Certainly, I know Coach Williams and his staff and his gang of Grizzlies over there will certainly rather be singing a tune of 4-0, but they do sit at 3-1. I think they've got to avoid the trap game this week and stay where they are, to stay where they are in my ratings, and more importantly, to keep pace in region play. So golden opportunity for Creekview to pick up another victory. And, had they beat Sprayberry last week and won this game at Pope, I would say they're the shoe-in, maybe not to win the region, but they're the team that's going to be, we could say is definitely be in the playoffs. But that didn't happen, so more to come on that. Number 2, Coop, where we heard from our super fans at number 2, right? They were, it almost seemed like they were biased. Like, how can I pick against my team? So that also qualifies them as super fans. I would not be a super fan. I'm kind of like a pessimist fan. Like, we suck, and you know what? This is why I'm picking against us. But who do you have at number 2, Coop?
Yeah, I got the River Ridge Knights at number 2 again. They both Sequoyah and River Ridge won. Again, I still stand by the fact that I can't just throw away a whole team's resume for one game. It's still a body of work, and the body of work still leans to Sequoyah being a better team. So, look, River Ridge can make a lot of headway. Well, not really. I mean, unless Sequoyah loses, which I did predict they were going to lose, by the way. But if Sequoyah loses, then yes, River Ridge would jump them. If River Ridge beats Sprayberry, that would be like a huge win for River Ridge, and we'd be like, yeah, congratulations, you're now equivalent to Sequoyah.
I guess.
Woo, like, I mean, that's kind of the thing.
Whoa. Now equivalent to Sequoyah, you're talking about a team that beat Sequoyah, which is why I have the River Ridge Knights at number 1 and Sequoyah at number 2. Let's not forget that. And that happened recently, Coop. And that's my recency bias, and I'll go ahead and admit that. So I'm going to go ahead and side with Miss Jenkins on this one. I've got River Ridge at number 1 and Sequoyah at number 2, rounding out my power rankings for the week. And again, it's the recency bias, but I do believe that River Ridge right now, no disrespect to Sequoyah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think this is one of the most impressive runs that I've seen in my 19 years here living in Cherokee County. Maybe one of the more impressive runs in the history of Cherokee County football. What they did, run off 15 consecutive wins against county opponents, the run to the quarterfinals, the run to the second round last year, a first round game, just the way and certainly maybe some of those the playoff, the depth of playoff might not equal semifinal run for Etowah that happened back in the early teens, but certainly the body of work over this senior class for Sequoyah is something that I think we haven't seen in a long time here. So I'm not going to take anything away from the Chiefs. They're a great football team. But they also lost to the River Ridge Knights, who's a pretty doggone good football team themselves. So I got the Knights number 1, Sequoyah number 2, and that's where I stand.
No use in arguing about it
because you're not going to change my mind, and I'm not going to change.
You're not going to change mine either, so that's okay.
So Coop, we've made it through another podcast, and again, thanks for our guests again, Mr. Jeff Craig and Miss Belinda Jenkins. I want to get a quick update from you, Coop. Friday Night Lights on Preston. Were you able to get out to a football game on Friday night? What's going on in Texas high school football?
It's homecoming coming up this week. All of our teams were out and away. We did have a big rivalry down the road. Prosper and Rock Hill. Prosper is being ranked nationally now, like top 25. Some fans might remember us talking about them. They have 3 offensive linemen that are ranked 4-star.
Mm-hmm.
So their center and then 2 tackles are all 4-star. So they run the ball. It's a little bit of joyless murder ball
Mm-hmm.
over there, which, if you got the talent, do it.
Certainly.
They beat Rock Hill 49-3, I think.
Bludgeoning. Yeah.
It was a bit of a slaughter. BTA, and then Salina went to Aubrey, won big. Gunner had the week off. This week is a big one for Salina. It's homecoming week, so that's a big deal. But also they're hosting Sulphur Springs, which is going to be their highest rated opponent this year, including earlier they played Waco La Vega, who was a big time opponent for this team. That was a game that got rained out. If you remember that video of the storm, that was that game. Well, Sulphur Spring comes in a region game. It's technically considered district. It's different wording, but region for Georgia high school football. We'll just stick with it. Region game, and they're ranked 5th in 4A. So this is going to be a heck of a test for Salina, who's ranked 2nd now. Didn't lose, but Stephenville, who's a little suburb outside of Dallas, more southwest than we are, they jumped them just because they've been winning by so much. Could be your kind of 4A state championship coming up. We'll see. But either way, Sulphur Spring is going to bring a lot of talent down. So it should be exciting to see that game. And then other than that, man, things have just been kind of rolling. I mean, I think from what we've seen, Gunner in 3A continuing their good work. Last time out, they beat Beals by 50. So they're kind of looking like they're going to roll into the 3A, at least bracket, if not the state championship game. Don't want to put the cart before the horse. Salina continues their good work. They haven't been as impressive as they were last season, but putting together wins, including some adversity as well. They've kind of gone through some adversity, but they battled it well. And then Prosper, I think, is the biggest one because, they have beaten teams that have beaten like North Crowley, which would be like beating Buford in Georgia. So Prosper is has put themselves from the beginning of the year. They weren't ranked top 25, even in the state. And now they're getting ranked like 25th nationally. So they've come a long way. So a lot of good football here on the corridor. Preston Road is this corridor that we're on. So it's been a lot of fun to watch, but we'll be out at Salina for their homecoming game this week. If you mention anything about the weather, I'm going to punch you because it is supposed to be a 87-degree kickoff again. So whatever you're going to say about your weather on Friday, just don't. Because I don't want to hear it.
I'll be over at the Grizzly Den serving as substitute public address announcer. So I'll be in the friendly confines of the booth. But my only message to folks here in Cherokee County is bring a blanket because it's going to be a little chilly.
I would give anything to have to bring a blanket. It would give anything. I'm so done. It's going to be 87, Art. It's going to be 87. 87.
If it's any consolation, Coop, the high temperatures the last couple of days are about 82, 83 here. So I know
up.
I'm gonna shut my mouth. I'm gonna shut my mouth.
It was 90 here today.
You know what? I better shut my mouth before you stick Miss Jenkins on me because she can deliver a tongue lashing like no other, man. That's that old school Southern tongue lashing, like you said, being in a Southern Baptist church. And anyway, Coop, we've reached the end of our podcast. We want to thank all of our listeners, our guests, again, Mr. Craig and Miss Jenkins, all of you who listen, all the players, coaches who give us something to talk about. We do hope we're honoring you guys and what we say and promoting you guys in a positive way. Week 9, Coop, we're entering like the home stretch. And I know we've got, both regions that we cover will have bye weeks coming up here shortly. But tell you what, a lot to sort out in both regions. I'm looking forward to this stretch. It's kind of nice when we don't know how this is going to shake out. There's not been a dominant team, at least not in 6-5A. So this makes it a little more exciting, a lot of more enough for us to prognosticate about for the last 3 weeks of the football season.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, if you're not invested, buckle up because, I mean, again, everybody's sitting at 3-1, Mr. Craig put it perfectly. Nobody does control their own destiny. Everybody needs help
Mhm.
in some way, shape, or form. And, God forbid we get to the end of this season and we got a couple of one-loss teams in this region because, oh Lord, and it's possible at this juncture, by the way. There's a very real possibility we could have two teams that have one loss, and the tiebreakers go crazy,
Yeah, and
as the kids say.
and if we've got a coach who's listening, who might be listening, I don't know what coach would be listening to us if they listen. If you guys want to go ahead and send us that tiebreaker formula,
Please do.
please do.
Yeah, because I know we're gonna need it.
Region 658. Go ahead and send that over to us.
Yeah, that would be great. But no, it's a ton of fun, man. And this is always the time that I love. And I will get out. As a matter of fact, depending on the results of this game, or the games this weekend, I should say, I may get out the whiteboard and start doing my, as you've seen me do in the
Yes.
past, start
Yes.
breaking out my if and
all the scenarios.
breakdown.
Yep.
So I may start doing that because it's about that time of year.
It is. It's a great time of year, Coop. Again, thanks for everyone for joining us. For my co-host, Will Cooper, I'm Art Mosley. Thank you so much for joining us on the North Georgia Sports Report. Have a fantastic weekend. It's festival season here in North Georgia, so get out and enjoy this great, well, I won't even say that, the W word here tonight, so I won't offend my good friend Will Cooper, but have a great weekend, everyone. Come back and join us next week as we have another episode of the North Georgia Sports Report. Thank you so much.